Hello and welcome to Rauta's Underground Trio. This time, once again, we have three different bands of three different styles and all. And as the usual case with Underground Trio is, we'll go from worst to best. So, saving the last band for the best band for the last slot. That was what I was meant to say. Like I said, these are all, of course, according to my personal opinion, so feel free to agree or just pick the bands according to your own style and preferences if that's your thing, or go through all of them if you feel like you're learning something new. All of these bands with the releases are somewhat older, so not exactly this year, but who cares? Good music never gets old, and I guess that applies to mediocre ones as well. The first here is from Slovakia. It's called Necroheresy, and this is already some kind of a disbanded band. Now, getting their second release, that is the first after the demo for review around 2020, was a little bit of a interesting thing because after all, the band already split up in 2018. What is left of this legacy is one EP, one demo, and one full album. And in this case, the review one is this Divine Betrayal EP from 2014. So a reissue of a MCD. And this one is here labeled as Death Trash, which I guess kind of is accurate enough how to describe this music. But if we were ready to go back to late 1980s or early 1990s, this I guess would be just called old school death metal. I mean, after all, a lot of those death metal bands had a lot of trashier parts with the music and all. So basically, Necroheresy is just all that. That is not too much trashiness apart across the songs and all that stuff, but just kind of basic, boneheaded, old school death metal in a way. Now, this would all sound very fantastic if the songwriting was golden, the production was solid, the growly vocals were just top notch and all. Unfortunately, that is not the case. More like Divine Betrayal is some 18 minutes and then some boring ways, a C-class death metal execution. The thing here is, none of these riffs really are like, wow, now something interesting is happening. This one is a banger and all that stuff because unfortunately it's not. None of these are super bad either. It's more just like, this is very much like a basic demo level recording in so many ways. The tracks are like, yeah, I get what you're after and all that stuff, but like I said, the riffs are very, very lukewarm, mediocre, basic standard kind of stuff. There's nothing original in that, and that's not even the main flaw here, because after all, it doesn't matter if you're original or not, if the music is good. Unfortunately, Necroheresy is almost like avoiding making good, catchy, memorable, brutal riffs. It's like there's nothing interesting compared to even somewhat interesting type of B-level death metal. So all we have here is kind of a recycled old school material, which is something that was very, very typical early 90s when a lot of death metal bands started to pop up and, you felt like going through the demos or compilation songs and like, yeah, I get what these guys are after, but not happening. I remember my own band from 1994. Of course, we didn't realize back in the days that none of our songs were not that good. But that's what you do when you have the early steps taken by your own band. You just do the material and hope it's good, even if it's not. And over time, you maybe are able to polish and hone to the level where people are saying that. That's actually pretty interesting, pretty good and all that stuff. Divine Betrayal is not there. And I kind of wonder why this even got a reissue because let's be honest about it. There's nothing fundamentally interesting with this release. The growly vocals are kind of a weak. The production is kind of a demo level weak also. And the songwriting, like I said, it's just lukewarm at its best. Very, very forgettable release overall, if not outright bad. So my scoring, 5.5 out of 10. The second, however, coming from Greece is an interesting case. This has two albums out and for reviews like 2020 release, also a little bit older that is, from Dark Descent Records called Drakon, Darshan, Satan by Nox Formulae. And this one is actually pretty interesting because it's kind of a diverse take on Greek black metal. My first spin with the album wasn't so obvious, like in the terms of Greek sound, but I was something like, yeah, this is sounding warm, like a lot of those old school Greek bands. When we're talking about Roaring Christ, Varatron, Zemayal, etc., Kavir, maybe Necromantia, I mean, you kind of get the warm feeling, which is very, very distinguished. I mean, it's very, very different from, bands coming from the Nordic landscape, be it Norway, Sweden, Finland, or beyond. But Nox Formulae is kind of like at the same time very Greek sounding, but there is more variety with the songs than your typical Greek counterpart. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good thing, but it is what it is. Like for example, there are a couple of tracks where like one of these songs is like a techno track. If I remember correctly, it's the track number 6, The Arrival of Noctifer. But yeah, there are parts where it feels like maybe they are going a little bit overboard. Now the good thing with diversity is that it never gets like it's recycling a couple of ideas throughout the whole album, but there's more variation than a lot of other albums in the given genre. So yeah, warm sounding, check. Also melodic, check. Also a little bit exploring different territories, even without being avant-garde or outright just weird and original and all that stuff. Check and check. So all in all, this is a pretty interesting album, kind of interesting to get into because, those different melodies and those warmer parts, sometimes those non-metallic parts can be a little bit like, why on earth are you doing that? But, I mean, it doesn't really hurt the album as a whole. Given that this is 40 minutes in total, it never gets like boring or too much repetition happening and all that stuff because, it's not overly lengthy and all that stuff. Production wise and vocals wise, all that stuff, pretty solid. Nothing outstanding, but something that is very fitting for this kind of music. So kind of understandable why this kind of stuff was released. Maybe not for everybody, especially those who are looking for more grim or darker, sinister, and more primitive kind of black metal. Those who are looking for something really extreme. Dragon Darshan Satan is not exactly that. But those who are in good terms with Greek, warmer sound of black metals, I think Nox Formula's second album is definitely worth checking out. Pretty good, so 7 out of 10. And roughly in the same territory as this band from Canada, this is technically speaking a side project with only one EP out. I don't know why, because there's so much potential with this one. Now, if you take a look at this members list, you will see that there's a plenty of guys from various different cult bands coming from Quebec area of Canada, which in my opinion is the best part of Canadian black metal. Like you have Desire, you have Frozen Shadows, you have even Monarch, even if live members, etc. So interesting guys coming from different parts and then making this album, I'm sorry, not album, but EP, which is not exactly your typical black metal, but exactly something that is called on Metal Archives doom slash trash metal. Now, I wouldn't go as far as to say this is doomy, because Adversity slash Servitude, this two-song EP from 2014, is actually just kind of a mid-tempo trashiness with a little bit of blackiness included. And if this sounds familiar because of Desire, it's for two reasons. First of all, the same vocalist, but also same kind of a songwriting. It's a kind of a punky, uh, straightforward approach with simple riffs, straight to the head and all that stuff with 4 minutes give or take, and that's what you have. So two songs, kind of a too quickly finished if you ask me. There would be more variety with the full album and all that stuff, but unfortunately that's not the case. Two songs around 4 minutes, and if you're gonna like one of the tracks, you're gonna like both. And if you're not gonna like either one, well, you're out of help. But this is indeed, in my opinion, the best of this pile. Hardly better than Notes Formulae, but this is just my personal taste because, for example, the Sire Band is, in my opinion, one of the better ones out of Quebec, and in general, I like this kind of punky, simplistic, trashy approach to metal with black metal or without it. So, kind of a more metal than a lot of those punky slash hardcore slash crusty bands, but still, there's some kind of straightforward and simple approach to the kind of music and songwriting, which I can totally appreciate. Not too lengthy, no bullshit, just very, very straightforward, but with mid-tempo, and that's all you have. Rough and tough, and I can totally vouch for this one. However, because of lack of variation and all that stuff, I wouldn't go beyond 7 out of 10. So not exactly on Desire level just yet, but definitely something that I hope is bringing more music later on. I don't know what's the story given that there's only one release out in 9 years or so, but let's keep our thumbs up for that. And mind you, there are other bands with the same name, Beast Within, so even in case you're searching for your favorite streaming service, make no mistake, this one has only one out. It's out on Bandcamp and of course physical product, so check it out if you think this is your cup of tea. With these three different releases, I hope you get the list and some of the bands. Links are provided in the description box, so click and listen, and if you like them, go buy them, like I always keep saying. Looking forward to your opinions and comments about these different bands with their releases. I hope you like them, at least some of them. So good luck and see you soon with more review videos coming your way.